Welcome back to another edition of Disney Dish. It's me, Jim Hill, and I'm doing this week's show solo because Len is on a boat somewhere. That's literally all the information I have, folks. As we were wrapping up recording last week's edition of Disney Dish, Mr. Testa turned to me and said, "You're going to need to do next week's show all by yourself because I'm going to be on a boat." Mind you, this boat could be the Disney Dish. It could also be a kayak that Len is taking to Quincy or Nyack. I'm not working with a whole lot of information here. All I know is that Mr. Testa will be back next week sometime. And at that time, he can hopefully bring us all up to speed about his nautical adventures, which I'm hoping do not include the phrase, "iceberg, dead ahead!" Meantime, it's just me, by my lonesome this time around. Well, that's not entirely true. On the second half of today's show, I'll be chatting with Banks Lee, and he and I will be talking about LEGOLAND, Florida, which is still in the process of celebrating the 10th anniversary of its grand opening back in September of 2011, and we'll talk about some of the cool new stuff that's coming online at that resort. But first, the news. And as always, the news portion of today's show is being brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Disney Dish. For a worry-free travel experience every time, please book online at StorybookDestinations.com. Okay, Len likes to begin every episode of Disney Dish with a hearty round of self-congratulations. I believe it's more appropriate to begin each show with a humble apology, which, when I actually think about it, clearly delineates Mr. Testa's worldview from my own take on the universe. On our last show, I was telling a story about how at one point in the late 1980s, early 1990s, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber was working on a new nighttime show for the Walt Disney World Resort, one that was supposed to be presented nightly out on Crescent Lake. That's that waterway that separates Disney's Boardwalk from the Yacht and Beach Club. Well, as longtime Disney Dish listener Jamie recently pointed out to me, the Tony Award winner behind Evita, Cats, and Phantom of the Opera has moved up in the world over the past decade or so. So were you to encounter Andrew out in polite society today, it's no longer proper to just call him Sir. His new title is Lord, or, if you prefer, the Baron Lloyd Webber. So my sincerest apologies to Lord and or the Baron Andrew Lloyd Webber. Now, if he just apologized for Starlight Express, we'll call it even. And speaking of Disney Dish listeners like Jamie, I also want to give a shout out to new subscribers C.K. Wilson, Craig Heitz, and Rob Hall, not to mention longtime subscribers like Dennis Campbell, Jim Finnegan, and Kira. These are the folks who, I'm almost reluctant to bring this information to light about that cool, delicious citrus treat, Dole Whip. But these are the folks who actually beat those poor oranges to a pulp using really for real whips, which I'm told is a crucial phase when it comes to the proper preparation of this theme park favorite. The upside? I'm told that whipping all those oranges makes for a great upper body workout. More to the point that all of that orange pulp, which hangs in the air thanks to all the frantic whipping, is actually an excellent source of vitamin C, which is why, oddly enough, it's far healthier to make a Dole Whip than it is to eat one. True story. And speaking of Dole Whip, Nancy and I made a hit-and-run trip to Disney Springs last week. We were down in Florida so that Nancy could attend Roma Drama Live, which is this celebration of all things Hallmark movie-related, which is held at the West Palm Beach Convention Center. After Roma Drama Live wrapped, we drove back over to Orlando and spent some of Monday afternoon at Disney Springs. I think we were there for 2 hours stop, shopping and dining. But while we were there, Nancy and I made a point of checking out Swirls on the Water. This kiosk, which actually opened at Disney Springs back on March 15th of this year, is located on the Causeway Bridge close to the Rainforest Cafe and Goofy's Candy Company. And I have to tell you, when Nancy and I were at Disney Springs, it was a brutally hot day. And when you're in Central Florida this time of year, nothing tastes better than an ice cold Dole Whip. And what's truly cool about Swirls on the Water is this is a place where you can get a Dole Whip flight, which features 6 different flavors. Or if you're 21 or older, you can get a sangria float. That's a cup of red wine with a dollop of Dole Whip on top. The only downside to Swirls on the Water? The line can get long out there on a hot afternoon. So be sure and bring a hat and some sunscreen if you're headed to Disney Springs on a summer day. It's honestly surprising how much exposure to the sun you can get as you troop from store to store along the shores of Lake Buena Vista. And while we're talking about shopping, I have a personal request for those Disney Dish listeners who may be headed overseas this summer. I'm talking to those folks who are either headed to Disneyland Paris or to Universal Studios Japan. Now, if you're headed to Japan, I have a favor to ask on behalf of my daughter Alice, who is a huge One Piece fan. Ever since the summer of 2007, Universal Studios Japan has staged its One Piece Premiere Summer Show, which is this in-park celebration of that hugely popular anime series. This year, in honor of the 15th anniversary of One Piece Premiere Summer, which runs at that Universal Park in Osaka from July to October of this year, Universal has published a book that looks back at the history of this seasonal attraction. And if possible, well, I'd love to be able to procure a copy of the One Piece Premiere Summer 15th Anniversary book for my daughter. And speaking of books, if there's anyone headed to France this summer, that brand new Art of Disneyland Paris book looks spectacular as well. And I'd love to be able to obtain a copy of that from my research library. So how about this? I'm looking for a kind soul out there who's either headed to Japan or France this summer. I need your help in obtaining a copy of the One Piece Premiere Summer 15th Anniversary book or the Art of Disneyland Paris book, and I will gladly cover the full cost of the book, plus the price of shipping, and as further incentive, I will even toss in a jug of genuine made-in-New Hampshire maple syrup, which I can't sample anymore because I'm a diabetic, but I hear is really, really tasty. Okay, I know, maple syrup is not Dole Whip, but it's readily available in the vicinity, and I was looking for a convenient bribe. No, that's the wrong word. What I meant to say was incentive. If you could help me out here, please let me know. And just in case you're wondering, no, I do not want anyone to pick me up a Lena Bell plush who's headed to Tokyo Disney Resort or Hong Kong Disneyland this fall. Lena Bell is the latest friend of Duffy to be introduced in that line of plush, which is hugely popular at the Disney parks in Asia. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the debut of Duffy, the Disney bear. He was first introduced to the world with the opening of Once Upon a Toy, that then the 16,000 square foot store that opened up at the Marketplace section of downtown Disney, now Disney Springs, back on July 19th, 2002. Now, Duffy didn't sell that well, not in the States anyway, initially. But the folks who worked on the consumer product side of things attribute this to the fact that Duffy was an original IP. He wasn't tied to any pre-existing Disney film franchise or TV show, and that was something of a turnoff to the people who were vacationing at Walt Disney World, back then anyway. Okay, we now jump ahead to 2004, where Duffy the Disney Bear is relaunched on the other side of the globe in an entirely new market, Japan. What's different this time around is that Duffy is heavily promoted as only being available in one place, which is Aunt Peg's Village Store, which is located in the American waterfront section of the Tokyo Disney Sea theme park. This is the original business plan that was developed for Duffy's debut at Walt Disney World, in that the only place back then that guests were supposed to be able to purchase the Disney Bear was at the Once Upon a Toy store at downtown Disney. But after sales back in 2002 were initially slow, people at the resort panicked and then put Duffy everywhere with the hope here is that the additional exposure around Walt Disney would help spur sales. Anyway, back to Japan now. It was that combination of cute and exclusivity. Remember, you can only get Duffy the Bear at Aunt Peg's Village Store at Tokyo Disney Seas. And more to the point, only way you can get this piece of plush is if you have a ticket to that theme park. Well, that turns this retail line into an absolute gold mine. I mean, there were park guests who would stand in 3-hour-long lines that would then snake all over the American waterfront section of Tokyo Disney Seas just for the chance to buy the latest iteration of Duffy or one of this Disney Bear's friends, which include Shelley May, also a bear, Gelatoni, who's a cat, Stella Lou, a rabbit, Cookie Ann, a dog, and Olu Mel, a turtle. And just in case you're wondering, Lena Bell is a fox, and she officially goes on sale at the Tokyo Disney Resort on September 8th, where Hong Kong Disneyland patrons have to wait till September 9th before they can purchase this highly collectible plush, which will likely sell out in seconds. And speaking of selling out, did you see where the Oogie Boogie Bash has already sold out for this year? And that's with 23 different dates being offered for this after-hours party at that park. What's kind of shocking everyone at admissions at the Disneyland Resort right now is, well, tickets for this year's Oogie Boogie Bash only went on sale Tuesday, June 28th. That's less than 10 days from when I'm recording this episode of Disney Dish. The 28th is when Magic Key holders and D23 members got first dibs on dates, and then everybody else got a shot at scoring tickets to this year's Oogie Boogie Bash beginning on Thursday, June 30th. And then just 3 days later, on Sunday, July 3rd, Disneyland.com posts a message on its seasonal events page that says that there are no more tickets available for the 2022 edition of Oogie Boogie Bash. Last year, tickets for the 2021 edition of Oogie Boogie Bash went on sale in mid-July, on July 13th of last year to be exact, and then didn't sell out till August 26th. Now, that meant the tickets for that edition of this seasonal event were on sale for 6.5 weeks and then didn't sell out to just 9 days before the first of these after-hours parties were held. Whereas for this year's Oogie Boogie Bash, tickets for this hard ticket seasonal event went clean in 5 days' time. And we're now 9 weeks out from the first Oogie Boogie Bash to be held for 2022. And again, last year's set of Oogie Boogie Bash didn't sell out to 9 days before the first party. And here we are 9 weeks ahead of the first Oogie Boogie Bash, and the tickets are gone. From talking with people at the park, they're just kind of blown away by this. And this is a 5-hour party we're talking about. It's held from 6 to 11 p.m. Ticket prices range from $129 to $179, and you could easily buy a full day at DC or Disneyland Park for that price. That said, there really was great word of mouth coming off of last year's Oogie Boogie Bash. Guests especially enjoyed the Villains Grove at the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, and the Disneyland Resort has already been teasing that 2 new villains will be appearing at this year's hard ticket seasonal event. But I have to ask you, was that really enough to cause this sort of frenzy when it came to tickets for the 2022 edition of Oogie Boogie Bash? I mean, tickets gone clean in 5 days' time? I mean, again, that just seems crazy to me. While we're on the topic of Disneyland, Mr. Testa always makes a point of sharing whatever surveys that Disney Dish listeners send in to us, and loyal listener DWV went to the happiest place on earth last week, and when he got home, Disneyland sent a survey to DWV and then asked him to reflect on his day in the park. To hear DWV talk was largely about Disneyland's current COVID protocols, whether they were too much or not enough, and what's kind of concerning about this line of inquiry is that, well, as Deadline.com reported yesterday, California's largest county, which is Los Angeles County, is now on course to be labeled a high COVID level community within the next 7 days. And you have to wonder what the Disneyland Resort will do if California's largest county suddenly decides to revive its mandatory indoor mask mandate, which, by the way, I'm hearing is already on the table. On a lighter note, who writes these surveys? Check out the way that some of the questions are phrased. It's this weird blend of corporate speak and word salad. All right, take, for example, this survey question. What was the primary reason you chose to visit Disneyland Park? Oh, okay, not bad. It's when we get to your possible response to this specific survey question that things start to go off the rails. Your possible responses to what was the primary reason you chose to visit Disneyland Park are to experience the seasonal decor at the park, to see a favorite character / franchise, to experience a limited time / seasonal event, to shop, to experience the rides, the attractions, and shows of the park in general, to experience limited crowds, to experience the characters of the park in general, to celebrate a special occasion, e.g., birthday, anniversary. It's a weather-friendly park. To experience a specific attraction or show, friends or family wanted to go, and finally, to eat. Okay, a couple of responses really leaped out at me. To see a favorite character / franchise, to experience a limited time / seasonal event, lots of slashing going on there, and then to experience limited crowds. But again, you look at these survey responses, and they weren't written by somebody who regularly interacts with other human beings. All I can think of is must be one of the lizard people who are supposedly secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes in modern society. I mean, it's a weather-friendly park. What exactly does that response mean? That Disneyland is very polite to tornadoes and typhoons when they suddenly decide to make a stop at the corner of Harbor and Catella? You know what these surveys response remind me of? That Steve Buscemi bit from 30 Rock where Buscemi is playing a cop who's tasked with infiltrating a high school and has to pose as a typical student, and only Steve blows the assignment on the very first day by walking up to this random group of students who are standing in the hallway of the high school and then saying, "How do you do, fellow kids?" Again, just in case you're wondering, DWV's response to these questions, this question about what the Disney survey said about the reason his family went down to Anaheim, is that they wanted to experience the seasonal decor at the park, and they wanted to experience some specific chosen attractions. And DWV then cited the Disneyland Forever fireworks, Fantasmic, and then Pirates of the Caribbean as the shows and attractions that he and his family were most looking forward to experiencing at their time at Disneyland. And as for the third reason that his family went to Disneyland, they just cut right to the chase, to eat. I wonder if they got a Dole Whip flight while DWV and his family were at the park last week. And speaking of flights, we're going to be traveling from the Golden State to the Sunshine State once we get back from this commercial break as I chat with Banks Lee about the 10th anniversary of the LEGOLAND Florida Resort. But first, this.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
Okay, we were just talking about the Tokyo Disney Resort a few minutes ago, and I don't want to seem ungrateful, especially since the Disneyland version of the Main Street Electrical Parade just got that brand new, great-looking finale unit. But there's great-looking, and then there's great-looking. And by that I mean, have you seen the videos that are popping up online of that new train drum unit that leads off Tokyo Disneyland's Electrical Parade Dreamlights nighttime show? Oh my God, that thing has LEDs. The smokestack on the train has its own individual animation cycle. There isn't an inch of this thing that isn't loaded with movement and color. Which has me asking, why can't we get a nighttime parade at one of the stateside parks that's the equivalent in quality to one of these nighttime parades that are presented at the Tokyo parks? I mean, look, I get it. There's an entirely different business model being followed over at the Tokyo Disney Resort. And the Main Street Electrical Parade, the one that's at Disneyland right now, is nice and all. I mean, it's a wonderful exercise in nostalgia. But most of those parade floats that are now rolling nightly through Disneyland Park were built for the second iteration of the Main Street Electrical Parade, which debuted on both coasts in the U.S. during the month that I graduated from high school, which was June of 1977. That's too damn old, folks. Hell, I'm too damn old, folks. And speaking of exercises and nostalgia, for the past year or so, Len and I have been talking about the 50th anniversary of the opening of Walt Disney World Resort. But it's important to remember that the Magic Kingdom theme park wasn't Central Florida's first tourist attraction. That honor has to go to Cypress Gardens, which Dick Pope, who has often been called the father of Florida tourism, opened back in January of 1936. People used to travel from all over the globe to Winter Haven so they could then view the more than 8,000 flowers from 90 different countries that were on display in this tourist attraction's 30-acre botanical garden area, or to watch a water skiing show out on Lake Eloise. Cypress Garden had some very famous fans. Elvis Presley shot a movie there, as did Esther Williams, and TV legend Johnny Carson actually shot a TV special there in the summer of '68 when the famous Tonight Show band was replaced by a group of musicians who played underwater. That group was called, no lie, the Wetbacks. I know, not very PC, but you got to remember the 1960s were a very different time. Anyway, among Cypress Gardens' famous fans were Roy O. Disney and his wife, Edna. And every winter, the Disneys would travel to Florida, and each time they traveled to the state, Roy and Edna would make a point of swinging by Cypress Gardens, where the Disneys eventually became friendly with Dick Pope and his wife, Julie. Which brings us to the late winter of '63. Dick's in his office behind the scenes at Cypress Gardens when he gets a call from the kid who's manning the booth at the entrance of the tourist attractions parking lot, and the kid tells Mr. Pope that Roy and Edna have just pulled into the parking lot. So Dick leaves his office and then walks down to Cypress Gardens' main entrance because he wants to personally greet the Disneys when they arrive for their annual visit at his park. And first 5 minutes goes by, and then 10 minutes goes by, and Mr. Pope starts to get a little concerned, so he walks out to the parking lot, where Dick then catches Roy counting the number of cars that are in the Cypress Garden parking lot that day. And as the story goes, Mr. Pope quietly stood there watching Walt's brother count a few more rows of cars and then called out to them, "Is there something you want to tell me, Roy?" Of course, Mr. Pope didn't know that Walt was already looking for land for Project Florida and that the Disney company wouldn't find the right chunk of property, which was nearly 40 miles to the north of Cypress Gardens, still 9 months later in November of '63. Mind you, Walt wouldn't reveal his plans for all that land that his company had purchased outside of Orlando till 2 years later. But there was no bigger booster for the Disney World project than Dick Pope. Dick understood right from the get-go that the more tourists Walt Disney lured to Central Florida, the more likely it was that at least some of these folks would make their way over to Cypress Gardens. And for nearly 2 decades, this mutually beneficial arrangement worked. People who were visiting Walt Disney World, especially those who wanted to work in a visit to Tampa and St. Pete after they'd seen the Magic Kingdom, would usually make a stop at Cypress Gardens. But all that changed in June of 1990. This was when Universal Studios Florida first opened. That theme park effectively changed the center of gravity, at least when it came to Central Florida tourism. Whereas tourists used to travel from Walt Disney World over to Tampa and St. Pete, with Cypress Garden then serving as a convenient midpoint to stop and stretch your legs, see the sights. But once Universal Studios opened in the summer of 1990, Central Florida's tourism trail suddenly changed directions. Instead of going southwest to Tampa, people would now leave Disney and head northeast to Universal, SeaWorld, the iDrive area, and downtown Orlando. And as a direct result, attendance levels at Cypress Gardens began to fall. After the Popes handed off management of the park to their son, Dick Pope Jr., the property changed hands a number of times in the 1980s and the 1990s. 9/11 seemingly delivered a death blow to the property and what many called Central Florida's first real tourist attraction suddenly shuttered in April of 2003. But here's the thing about gardens. The seasons change and then they bloom again. And since so many people in and around Winter Haven just flat out love Cypress Gardens, they just weren't willing to see this place fade away. So between 2004 and 2009, there were a number of attempts made to get this classic Central Florida attraction back up on its feet. Most of those stumbled coming out of the gate, but in January of 2010, Merlin Entertainment, which, by the way, is the second largest theme park and attraction operator behind a certain mouse, announced that they'd be acquiring Cypress Gardens. More importantly, Merlin had plans to change Central Florida's first tourist attraction into the fifth LEGOLAND park. Merlin Entertainment also intended to do so in such a way that much of the charm of the original Cypress Gardens, especially those spectacular botanical gardens to the back of the property, would be preserved. LEGOLAND Florida formally opened to the public in October of 2011, and over the past year, this now full-blown resort, which isn't a single theme park anymore, but rather now home to 2 theme parks, a water park, 2 hotels, and a beach retreat, it's celebrating its 10th anniversary. Now, to talk about what's new and why you really need to make a trip over to Winter Haven, I have asked Banks Lee to come join us on today's Disney Dish. This is the guy who's been covering the Central Florida tourism beat for the better part of the past decade. You've no doubt seen some of the killer videos that Banks has produced over the years up on YouTube. And Mr. Lee and I used to run into each other all the time at media events. Whenever I go to the opening of a new attraction at Disney or Universal or SeaWorld, Banks would be there. Well, just recently, Mr. Lee went from covering the opening of theme parks to actually helping to plan the opening of a theme park. Can you tell the nice folks about your new role with the LEGOLAND Florida Resort, Banks?
Thank you so much, Jim. First off, it's such an honor to be here talking with you. I always love getting to see you out and about in the parks, and I love being here on the Disney Dish to talk to you guys about LEGOLAND Florida. So my role with LEGOLAND started actually 2 years ago, July 15th of 2020, so just celebrating my 2-year anniversary. I started off here in the PR team, the public relations team, where I was the PR manager for the resort, helping to create videos. My role has kind of evolved since then, so I'm now the production and marketing support specialist. So I'm still leading the charge with a lot of our productions in terms of videos that are made in-house, both externally and internally, and then I'm helping out with the marketing team as a whole with different projects as we go on through the years and the months and all the fun stuff that's happening around LEGOLAND Florida Resort. It's been an amazing transition. I had a blast. 10 years at Attractions Magazine, wouldn't change it for the world, but it's been really nice to kind of shift that focus to the other side of the media spectrum and helping things out from inside the theme parks.
Speaking of which, though, you had to have seen a lot of your old pals with the opening of the Peppa Pig theme park earlier this year, right? And that park, which opened in February 24th of this year, isn't just a new land at LEGOLAND Florida. It's a standalone theme park that's built around that hugely popular animated series for preschoolers, right?
Correct, yeah. Peppa Pig theme park is its own theme park, just steps away from LEGOLAND Florida Resort, as we like to say. It is geared toward that 2 to 5 preschool age range, and it's really one of the first theme parks out there that is specifically geared just for that age range. Obviously, this is not the size of the typical theme park that you find here in Central Florida, but for that age set, it's just the right size, and there's so much for them to be able to do, and not just them, but the adults as well are going to be able to enjoy the attractions together. And that was what really was the draw of opening Peppa Pig theme park, was the ability to let the parents ride these rides with their preschooler children.
Now, Banks was nice enough to walk me around the Peppa Pig theme park last week. We did a tour of the property with your colleague Sarah, and I have to say I was impressed by the job that Merlin Entertainment has done when it comes to translating the specific look of this British preschool show to the real physical world, because that's the gimmick of the Peppa Pig TV show, that all the characters in the show settings actually look like they were designed, drawn by actual kids.
Yeah, and when you walk through Peppa Pig theme park, you feel like the cartoon has come to life around you. Obviously, Peppa's house is such an iconic element of that show. It's always there at every episode at the top of the hill, and it is the center point of our park. That is where Daddy Pig's roller coaster is. And speaking of Daddy Pig's roller coaster, it's built by Zamperla, and it is one of the first family roller coasters to actually have a kid-friendly launch right in the middle of the ride. And the ride makes 2 laps around, so it's not just a one and done. The kids and the adults get to really enjoy the ride together for a little longer than a usual ride. And all of our rides are built for those parents to ride with the kids. The Grampy Rabbit's Dinosaur Adventure is probably my favorite ride because the adults can ride, kids can sit right in front of them. You get to ride through the dinosaur park. It's such a fun, unique element for the adults to enjoy time with their kids.
You also put together a really funny little tribute to the dinosaur ride that kind of riffed on Jurassic Park. That's on YouTube, is that right? Or the LEGOLAND Florida page?
Yeah, it's on all the Peppa Pig social media channels if you want to check out. That was a lot of fun to put together to tie into a certain movie that came out last month. We like to have fun.
Speaking of being first to do something, can you talk about the LEGOLAND Florida Resort recently having become a certified autism center? I mean, given that you guys are the first theme park resort to ever receive this certification, well, I think that's something that parents, especially for those who have kids somewhere in the spectrum, really need to hear about before they plan their next trip to Central Florida.
We are so proud that Legoland Florida Resort has partnered with IBCCES, the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards, to earn our designation as a certified autism center across the entire resort. That includes Legoland Florida Theme Park, Water Park, Peppa Pig Theme Park, and our 3 on-site hotels. So our employees, who we love to call model citizens, they're trained to better assist autistic guests and those with other sensory sensitivities and help them really enjoy their time at the resort. We also provide sensory guide for every attraction that provides insights into how that attraction or ride may affect each of the 5 senses, which that guide can be found on our website. We have booklets you can pick up at guest services in person, and also signs that are posted around the resort at these entrances to show guests what sensory the score is for each of the senses for the attractions, so they know going in, okay, so this one has a sound of 6, so this may be a little bit on the louder side. These are just ways that help make it easier for individuals and families to plan those activities that align with their needs.
When Banks and Sarah and I were touring the property, I saw signs like this all over the Legoland Florida Resort. Like, for example, in the part of the theme park that paid tribute to the Lego movies.
Yes, the Lego Movie World opened back in 2019. This is my favorite land in the entire Legoland theme park. It is based on the very popular Lego movies 1 and 2. We have rides like Unikitty's Disco Drop, which is a family-friendly drop attraction, very bouncy, very fun. And then the Lego Movie Masters of Flight. I love this ride. My kids love this ride. You're basically flying through the Lego Movie worlds and flying over all these different scenes that you recognize from both movies. It is so much fun, and I highly always recommend it to anyone that comes to Legoland, Florida.
This is the ride that's sort of like Legoland's version of Soarin'. The guests climb aboard Emmett's now triple-decker flying couch and fly over places like Cloud Cuckoo Land and Middle Zealand, which I'm assuming is somewhere between New Zealand and Old Zealand. Speaking of new, what other stuff is opened at the Legoland Florida Resort in the not-so-distant past?
Well, we have our 3rd on-site hotel, Pirate Island Hotel, actually opened back on June 1st of 2020. 150-room hotel, shares a check-in area with our main Legoland Hotel, which opened back in 2015.
2020, that's the year that the pandemic got started. So did you guys have to push back the opening of the Pirate Island Hotel because of COVID?
We did. So originally the opening was set for April of 2020, and then in March, everything happened due to COVID, and the hotel opening was pushed. But it is worth noting that June 1st was when both the Pirate Island Hotel and Legoland Florida Resort as a whole reopened from the pandemic. And we were actually the first theme park in Central Florida to reopen.
Jeez, so June 1st, that's almost 6 weeks ahead of when the theme parks over at Disney World reopen. I mean, as I recall, the Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom opened July 11th of that year, and then Epcot and Hollywood Studios didn't open until 4 days after that. What else did you folks do at this point in the pandemic to help keep visitors to the resort safe?
So obviously, on top of back when we first reopened, having those social distance markers printed out and put on the ground like Lego brick, we had mask policies as well. Hand sanitizers were installed resort-wide, over 200 hand sanitizers, which are still out there available because we really feel that was an element that could still go on past the pandemic rules and so forth. So we're keeping those out there. And also we're continuing to stay cashless as well. So entire resort wide, we are cashless. We do have some machines available in certain parts of the park where you can deposit some cash and get a temporary card to be able to make your purchases if you brought cash with you. So just in case that happens, we have the answer for you.
That's what I kind of loved about my recent tour of Legoland, Florida. If you were paying attention, there were these sorts of innovations, like the cashless thing, all over the place. Take, for example, those canopies of solar panels you guys erected over the resort's preferred parking area?
Yes, so those shaded parking that are also solar panels, we partnered with Tampa Electric to put those up over 600, about 600 car spaces there. That is our preferred parking lot. The solar panels went online back toward the end of 2016. And according to Tampa Electric, they generate about an average of 1.8 megawatts of power, which is about enough to power 250 homes a year.
That's killer. And that creating shade for guests out in the parking lot things, I guess it was so popular you decided to bring it into Legoland proper. I mean, can you talk about these enormous shade structures you folks just erected over the park's Miniland USA area?
Yes, so one of the biggest additions back in 2021 for our 10th anniversary year was this addition of a shade structure over Miniland. Obviously, we know Florida. We know it gets hot in the summer. We know it rains almost every day during the summer. And for 10 years, Miniland has been an open area for guests to enjoy these replicas of buildings across the country and across the state of Florida. But putting that shade structure over last year, which finished about November, toward the end of 2021, the structure finished. It's been watching it this summer, watching guests this summer of 2022 just spend so much more time in there, getting to get out of the heat, get out of the rain, and really take in the details of Miniland, because there's a lot to see. There's over 35 million Lego brick in Miniland alone to look at. And thanks to the shade structure, it's going to help kind of preserve those Lego bricks as well from sun damage, because 10 years of no shade, those brick have gotten a little bit worn out and faded, and especially with some of the white bricks. So currently, for the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years, our master model builders are hard at work replacing every model in Miniland with brand new models of brand new brick to really revitalize each section and bring new life and color to the area. So like Las Vegas, our Las Vegas section, I want to say it's almost 100% complete. They're working on San Francisco right now. So we're looking at probably in a couple of years, all of Miniland will look good as new.
Can you talk about what else has gotten plussed or improved as part of Legoland Florida's 10th anniversary celebration?
So another one of the biggest openings we had in 2021 for our 10th anniversary was a revitalization of our water ski show, the Brickbeard's Water Sports Stunt Show. Now, obviously, you mentioned in the intro, water skiing is a huge part of the history of Cypress Gardens, and we've had a water ski show ever since we opened back in October 2011. But 10 years later, in February of 2021, we updated that show. It's much more stunt focused. Brickbeard is the star of the show now. You are watching his recruits trying to join his team with some really awesome skiing and flyboarding acts happening on Lake Eloise, which flyboarding, the first time we've ever done that. It's so cool to see you watch that guy go into the air. It's just, it's an awe moment every single time. And then also to talk more about that history of Cypress Gardens, we do have the brand new LEGOLAND Story, which opened up near the front of our park. It also has a coffee company shop, so guests can come in and get their coffee and breakfast pastries right at the beginning to start their day off. And then they can go through this museum and read all about not only the history of Cypress Gardens and Legoland, Florida, the history of all Legoland parks, and the history of Lego itself. There's a movie that you can watch about how the founders founded Lego. There's a history of minifigures. There's so much to see in there, and that's just the first thing you come across to start your day.
I am so happy you mentioned minifigs, because you and Sarah were telling me about how this is Legoland, Florida, and I guess all of the Legoland parks around the country. This is your equivalent of like the pin trading at Disney, right?
Correct. Yeah. So obviously, the minifigure is a huge element of building Lego sets and collecting Lego. So we have the ability to trade minifigures with the guests. So guests, it doesn't matter what pieces. They don't have to be like complete Lego minifigure pieces. Like, you can mix and match whatever you want. Bring it with you. You can trade as much as you like throughout the day. We have certain areas in some of our retail shops that have boards you can trade minifigures. There is a minifigure trading wall inside the Legoland Story. If you see one of our model citizens walking around and they've got a minifigure on their badge, you can trade with them. It's just a really fun way to keep that interaction with guests throughout the park and make sure we're putting a smile on the face of every child.
And we were just talking about the Legoland Story, the museum / coffee shop thing toward the front of the park. And I have to say, there was a display in there about the enormous banyan tree that Mrs. Pope planted in Cypress Gardens Botanical Garden back in 1939, I want to say. Started out just as a seedling and then grew into this hugely impressive flowering tree, which I'm told it really impressed the Imagineers back in 1971. Do you want to tell that story?
So right after Disney opened back in October of 71, the Imagineers actually came out and toured Cypress Gardens and were impressed by the banyan tree, which, I mean, who isn't impressed by that thing when you walk through? It's so beautiful to walk under. They just spent $3 million building the Swiss Family Treehouse over in Adventureland. So the Imagineers really wanted to know how much the Popes had spent on the banyan tree here, because it was so massive and detailed. And Mrs. Pope recalled actually only spending about $350 on that seedling.
As in $3.50. Yeah. Wow. Okay. By the way, folks, I know I keep circling back on Cypress Gardens, Botanical Gardens area, but I have to say, one of the highlights of visiting this classic Central Florida attraction was you used to be able to climb into this fleet of electric boats and then cruise through this set of canals that went through the back part of property, where you then got this lovely up-close view of the colorful plants and the flowers that were on display in the garden that Mrs. Pope helped establish back in the 30s. And always kind of made me sad that the canal boats ceased operation back in 2003. They were just a charming part of Cypress Gardens. But just this past week, Banks, you guys had some good news for fans of this classic Central Florida attraction.
Yes, so we are, in a way, bringing back those canal boats, but in a Lego DNA kind of twist. So we're calling it Pirate River Quest. It is opening on November 2nd of this year, and guests are going to be able to board Lego pirate boats and journey through the Cypress Gardens area to find some lost treasure that have been stolen from Captain Redbeard by a troop of mischievous monkeys. There's lots of fun elements, Lego DNA spread out through the canals of Cypress Gardens. But at the same time, the Cypress Gardens area hasn't lost its charm at all. So, like, you may see these scenes along the canals, but the gardens itself are still a very important, integral part of Legoland, Florida, and the history of Winter Haven and this whole area. So we want to make sure that we didn't really disturb everything that these gardens have been turned into. So these boats are still going to go through the canals. You're going to get to go out on Lake Eloise. There's still going to be lots of fun Lego surprises that you'll get to see during this cruise starting on November 2nd of this year. And I am very excited because, as a fan of the history of Cypress Gardens, to be able to bring back those canal boats in a unique way is exciting, very exciting.
So November 2nd, that's right after you folks wrap up Brick or Treat, which is Legoland Florida's annual Halloween hard ticket event, right? And as I understand it, the 2022 edition is going to be the biggest one you guys have ever staged, right?
Correct. Yeah, 2022 for Brick or Treat is going to be the biggest Brick or Treat we've ever done. And one of the ways that it is going to be the biggest one is we are extending the dates this year. Usually Brick or Treat only happens in weekends in October, but this year we're starting September 24th and 25th to be exact. So this will be the first time we've had Brick or Treat happening in September. So extended dates and lots of fun to happen. And I can say we will have a lot more to talk about very soon about Brick or Treat.
Killer. Okay, now speaking of seasonal celebrations, Banks and I are recording this segment for Disney Dish on Tuesday, July 5th, which is right after Legoland Florida presented its Red, White, and Boom. So that's a special fireworks display for the 4th of July, which I'd imagine the folks who live around Lake Eloise also got to enjoy.
So yeah, the part about being on Lake Eloise is Lake Eloise is a public lake, and there are people that live on Lake Eloise or live on any of the lakes that are connected to Lake Eloise because the area is called the chain of lakes for a reason. People can go from one lake to another. So with it being a public area, we welcome boats to come up. We have a kind of a seawall of tires set up on the lake that kind of separate our lagoon with Lake Eloise. And we welcome boaters and skiers and jet skiers to come up and park their boat on that wall and enjoy the show from a different angle. Or when we have fireworks like our Red, White, and Boom 4th of July fireworks, to be able to park in a safe area along the lake and watch the fireworks from the lake. Like, it's kind of a unique way to enjoy some of our things from a different angle.
During my tour of the park, Banks and Sarah took me to the a showing of Brickbeard's water sports show. And as you describe, I mean, there were folks who literally came out for the first show of the day and parked their boats to watch the show. And they were, again, along that sort of breakwater thing at the edge of the lagoon for the stadium, which the stadium is right next to where the Pirate River Crest attraction is being built right now, right? Again, the thing that opens in early November.
That's correct. Right there in Pirates Cove.
Okay, all right. I guess it looks like I got to schedule a return trip to Legoland for later this year, though. If you've got a Lego enthusiast on your holiday shopping list this year, you might also want to schedule a special trip to Winter Haven just for the shopping opportunities. Can you explain that, Banks?
So yeah, of course, being a Legoland park, we want to give guests the opportunity to take home a Lego set or two. So we have several gift shops around the park. Most notably, we have the Big Shop. It is the biggest Lego shop on our property, right by the entrance. So I like to say, because I'm a Lego enthusiast, I'm an adult fan of Lego. Like, I'm not going to hide it. Like, my kids love it. We get sets all the time. And inside Big Shop, you can find a lot of those, like, rarer, hard to find Lego sets that are out there. They don't generally sell out as often as you would at a regular Lego store out in the world, because with our shop, I mean, you have to have admission to the park to even come in and shop there. So they don't sell out as often. So I always like to tell people, if you're looking for that new roller coaster set that just came out, get a ticket to come Legoland. You can enjoy the day and you'll be able to pick it up right at the Big Shop as you leave.
For our Marvel fans out there, I don't know if you've seen the photos that are out there for the crazy Doctor Strange Sanctum Sanctorum set that's coming out on August 1st. It's 2,700 pieces, 3 stories tall. Again, I'm anticipating that this one will disappear off store shelves, but on the other hand, hey, a reason to head to Legoland and maybe pick it up there. Anyway, I want to thank Banks Lee for coming on this week's Disney Dish and reminding us that there's more to a Central Florida vacation than just hanging around the mouse's house. And in fact, if you want to see why Roy and Edna Disney always made a stop at Cypress Gardens every time they visited Sunshine State, be sure and check out Legoland Florida Resort. There's a surprisingly large amount of new stuff to do there in those 2 theme parks and the water park and the 2 hotels.
We would love to have you come out to Legoland Florida Resort. We are continually building Lego pun there. So definitely coming out. There's lots more in store for us. And Jim, I thank you again for having me on. It's been such a joy getting to chat with you and talk about Legoland and kind of get to do a little bit of what I used to do again.
Thanks again to Banks for coming on this week's Disney Dish and helping to fill in for Len, who I assure you, barring some unfortunate incident that may occur out on international waters, Mr. Testa will be back in time to co-host next week's show. I mean, seriously, what are the odds that Len gets captured by Somalian pirates? I'm not a betting man, but I'm thinking the mid to low 30s, right? And as Mr. Testa always says, we are produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who this coming weekend will be headed out to Old Cape Cod for the Hydrangea Festival. What's that you say? Why would somebody who makes their living editing audio want to take part in a 10-day-long event that features tours of private gardens across the Cape? Not to mention workshops on things like how to prune your plants. Well, here's the thing. Aaron Adams isn't just attending these classes. He's actually teaching those workshops. I mean, who better to teach a class in pruning than somebody who edits all day? And while Aaron's doing that, please head on over to iTunes and rate and recommend the show. Better yet, tell us what you want to hear on the next Disney Dish. And speaking of our next show, if you tuned in for this particular podcast because you wanted to hear the second part of my series about how the Maelstrom ride at Epcot's Norway Pavilion got turned into Frozen Ever After, if Len gets back, I promise to finish that story. Sorry, slip of the tongue. Didn't mean to say if, when Len gets back, because he's absolutely coming back from that boat trip, right? And so he and I will see you on the next show.